Good morning, everyone. I have a lot of very interesting subjects to talk about today, including what's going on in Israel, the new setup called Project 25 in the USA, which is being run by Donald Trump, spellcasting and Hollywood. I'm going to be talking about a vision that I had where I saw Salman and Mohammed bin Salman and President Trump working together. Going to be talking about the Q team and lots of other information. So I hope that you really enjoy everything that I have for you today. And let's get started. So the first thing was that I was given a vision, and in the vision, I saw Mohammed bin Salman stood next to Donald Trump, President Donald Trump. And I wanted to understand why they were showing me those two figures stood prominently at the top and side by side. And so I said to them, what is it that you're trying to tell me in this vision? And they said to me that in this vision, they were showing me how the world is divided into two main parts of East and West, and that Mohammed bin Salman will be the vibrational king of the East, and that President Donald J. Trump will be the vibrational queen of the West. And so they are both together the checkmate moves. And I said to them, but they're on a chessboard, there can be more than one queen. And they said yes. And so the other counterparts, which is the other four regions, like North, East, South, and West, they will also be known as queen moves. So then I said, so will leaders will they be currently replaced, or will the true leaders of these regions, which are currently hidden, be brought in? And they said both. And I said, please, can they explain that? And they said the regions of Northeast, Southwest are overseen by members of the Q team. So currently they are hidden, but they are all the queen moves. And I said, so does this mean that the Q team identity will be known in the future? And they said, in some cases, yes. So then I wanted to know, is there going to be a world event which is going to cause us to switch over to this new quantum financial system, or the new setup which has been spoken about a lot for the USA? And what they said to me was, so I asked them, is a worldwide event, natural or otherwise, coming that will be the precursor or activator of switching over to a new system, like, say, for a financial system? And they said yes. And I said, what is it that's going to happen? And they said that an event is ahead of us that will close down the entire planet, but it is not a doomsday event. They said it is an event that will allow for the Q team to successfully switch across to the new system on the Web 5, Web 7. And if you go back to my previous videos, I've actually explained about, what Web 5, Web 7 is, and that it's a software which is going to be running Space Operations Command. So I did sort of clarify with them. So do you mean that this new system is going to be the Space Force teams? And they said in some cases, the Space Force will be upgraded to the next level of cybersecurity, but mainly the operating levels of society are going to see a big switchover to a new financial system, digital with digital ID, and this will make banking more streamlined and less able to be hacked, as it will move into cryptographic systems on the whole. And I said, what is a cryptographic system? They said a cryptographic system is a number generating sequencing method of creating unique passcodes for a personal ID over and above the blockchain and other layers of banking and financial security. And I said, is this switch being developed by governments or private organizations? And they said both. Then I wanted to know who would be overseeing this worldwide event, this switchover. And they said it would be the Q team. And I said, who is the Q team? And they said it's a select number of cybersecurity, financial, political, and spiritual people that are in the Q team. And I said, is the Q team covered? Does it cover like worldwide? And they said, yes, Q is a highly secretive group, which is over and above any current government or financial system. And they said that Q oversees everything on this planet at this time. And I said, so what is intended by Q for the people? Is it a benevolent group of people? Is Q a benevolent group of people? And they said that Q has a very distinct group of people working within it, and that they have been assessed not just for their personal skills in banking, cyber, and programming, but they also have a spiritual purpose at this time. And the purpose is to move humanity into a new phase of freedom. And I said, who are the people inside the Q who are supporting Q, this top team? I said, is it John McAfee? They said, yes. And I said, is it Donald Trump? They said, yes. Mohammed bin Salman, yes. Julian Assange, yes. Michael Snowden, yes. Steve Jobs, no. Juan O'Savin, they said indirectly. Putin, yes. President Xi, yes. Modi, they said indirectly. They also said that the top team of the military are also supporting Q. And I said, who is in the top team of the military? Is it the Delta and the Space Force Operations Command? And they said no. So in my previous video, I talked about the worldwide military peace plan, and I explained the role of Delta and the Space Operations Command. And they're telling me that that level is not within the Q group. So the Q group is above Space Operations Command. The military group is very secretive and works specifically with this Q team. So this top military group, which is above Space Operations Command, it works in a very secretive way with the Q team. I said, are any private organizations working with the Q team? I said, Microsoft. They said no. Google, no. Facebook, no. But Meta, which is part of Facebook, they said was working with the Q group. And I think I said in a previous video that Elon Musk might be taking over different layers of, say, YouTube and other social media platforms. They might be going under the X.com. And I think they mentioned that Meta might be in X.com. So as we know, Elon Musk is very high up in the strategic plan around the world. So it would make sense that X.com was somewhere within this structure. So I did ask, what about Elon Musk? Is he working with the Q team? And they said, absolutely. He's one of the key players. And I said, why is he a key player? And they said, Musk has taken a difficult route because he's having to move away from his bloodline to make a stand in favor of humanity. And although he's apolitical, he is now using his wealth and position to help humanity with free speech and freedoms. So then I just wanted to go back to Mohammed bin Salman. They said that Mohammed bin Salman is also another courageous soul who has needed to take a stance against his bloodline and also his cultural identity. And he's doing this so he can work for humanity on securing, the financial and political freedoms for humanity. They said that he is moving a strongly embedded Muslim and Islamic culture more towards the center ground and away from extremism and suppression. So, for example, he has been allowing women to have more rights in Saudi Arabia. And he's also been creating a dialogue with Israel. So before the war broke out, I had written this down. This was in my book before what's happened now in Israel. We'll be covering that a bit further on in this video. So I said, so what is the dialogue with Israel? So before the war, what was the dialogue? He is working with Benjamin Netanyahu, which I can't say very easily, to create stronger bonds in the Middle East. And he is also trying to work with Iran to make a strong region of peace. So Mohammed bin Salman's enormous wealth per capita is also held on the balance sheet in the quantum virtual vault. So if you go back and find my video on the quantum virtual vault, I explained how each region of the world is reflecting their wealth into the quantum vault, which is a digital asset. And then all the wealth goes into the vault to then be divided up equally around the world. So Mohammed bin Salman has been working to get the Middle East portion of the assets reflected into the quantum virtual vault. So in order to do that, people have to be signing in to the worldwide peace plan. So Salman, it seems, has been a crucial player in those operations of speaking with the Middle Eastern countries, trying to make negotiations and deals so that they will sign in to the worldwide peace plan and reflect their assets into the quantum digital vault. So just going back, they said that Mohammed Salman's enormous wealth per capita is also held on the balance sheet in the quantum virtual vault. And once translated into digital currency, this will help to distribute wealth fairly to all nations going forward. I said, is this worldwide event, is it going to allow the distribution of the wealth from the quantum virtual vault? And they said, yes. The virtual event, which is going to shut down the world, it's just going to be an event which temporarily closes everything down. And what they're saying is it's at that point they will switch it over to the quantum virtual vault. So then I wanted to ask them, this is before the Israel war, are we waiting on the Q team to stabilize the Middle East? And they said, yes. And I said, what about Ukraine? Is this a distraction? And they said that the Ukraine is a distraction whilst they get the heavy hitters of the Middle East aligned. I said, are we also waiting on China, Taiwan, and Indonesia? And they said, not to the extent that we are waiting on the Middle East. I said, the USA, to what extent is that holding up this worldwide event, this switchover? They said that actually the USA is already available and ready to go. So I said, so Salman is the key component at the moment that we are all currently waiting on. And they said, yes, which goes back to the vision why I was seeing Trump and Salman stood side by side. And I said, so this is, a big task for Salman. And they said, yes. And I said, so what assistance does he have? And they said he has diplomatic assistance from all the key regions of Northeast, South and West, etc. And I said, what stages are we at with securing this peace deal in the Middle East? Now, this was before the Israel war started. I said, are we talking about needing to align Iraq? They said, yes. Iran, yes. Saudi Arabia, yes. Israel, yes. Palestine, they said no. So this was very interesting because this was before the war broke out. So I said, away from the dialogues that are spouted or known on the mainstream media, what are the main points of negotiations within these regions which need to be aligned for them to join the worldwide peace plan? And they said that mainly the issues are around regions stopping the production of nuclear weapons of mass destruction, plus training the leaders who from these regions normally have strong autocratic tendencies. And so what they're trying to do is train these leaders on how to work for a larger system for humanity. And so they are being aligned so that they understand the Q plan, which is to sign into the centralized military peace plan by a space force and then assign assets to the quantum virtual vault, the worldwide quantum virtual vault, which will then help everybody around the world to maintain decentralized sovereignty. And it will allow peace with other countries and its own citizens. So what they seemed to be telling me before the war broke out was that Mohammed bin Salman has been having negotiations with these regions, trying to negotiate a way for them to join the worldwide military peace plan and to reflect their assets into the quantum virtual vault. These are areas of vast wealth. And so once we get all the assets reflected into the quantum virtual vault and they're ready to switch it across, then they can distribute that wealth fairly amongst everyone around the world. So the negotiations that Mohammed bin Salman has been undertaking, this had been going on up until the Israel war broke out. And I'm going to cover that in a moment. So I just wanted to reiterate with them that essentially we were talking on this, in order to get this to secure this worldwide peace plan, that we would need to have Space Force, obviously at the top, the quantum virtual vault, which would have a digital, which would reflect all of our digital assets, and it would have our digital IDs. And this would then create a decentralized system where we would be sovereign beings. And all of this was tied in to these peace plans, which are being put together as each region signs into the worldwide military plan. And they're telling me that heading up this whole thing, this whole worldwide plan, is again the King move, which is Mohammed bin Salman for the Middle East, and the Queen move, which is President Donald Trump, which is on the West. So at this point, before the Israeli war broke out, I was feeling into Mohammed bin Salman's energy. And at that point, he was feeling very relaxed, as if he had all the final pieces into place. In my previous video, I talked about how I had seen him in a private meeting in the Arctic, and they were saying, and I was saying to them, it looks like they've got all those pieces ratified. And at that time, it seemed like the meeting was about the quantum financial system. And they agreed that at that point, he was very relaxed, that it seemed like the quantum financial plan and system had been ratified at that meeting in the Arctic. And then shortly after that, the Israel war began. So I said, what exactly was agreed in that recent classified meeting in the Arctic? And they said that they were looking at how, on an operational level, they can make this switch like safely around the entire world. And I said, is this for this quantum virtual vault? And they said, yes. So they were negotiating how, when all the pieces are in position, when all the countries have signed in, and when they've all reflected their assets into the quantum virtual vault, they were negotiating how everything was then going to be able to go live from the quantum virtual vault. So I said, at that point, were the peace deals and the alignments in the Middle East, were they actually done and dusted? And they said yes. So this was before the Israel war broke out. So before the Israel war broke out, they had already done the peace deals and the alignments that were necessary in order to switch us to this quantum virtual vault, this worldwide military peace plan. And I said, so what is it? So at that point, before the Israel war broke out, I said, what is the waiting time right now? And they said that we are very close now to the Q team being able to switch the top structure on. And I said, do people in Space Force and Delta, do they know there is a heavy hitting layer above them? And they said, on the whole, they don't know that. So a lot of people within Space Force and Delta don't actually know there's another layer above them, which are coordinating this worldwide military peace plan and quantum virtual vault. I said the Q team, they said that the Q team has been working quickly and quietly in the background, and everything else, including Space Force, is just the operational level below that. And when Q make the switch, the Space Force will effectively help to run everything day to day at an operational level for the cybersecurity. And strategic cybersecurity will be run by the Q team. So then obviously after I'd had that discussion about the meeting that Mohammed bin Salman had been having in the Arctic, which they're saying had secured peace deals, then we suddenly had this Israel attacks happen. So I wanted to know what's going on, because it looks like that looks very different to what they had told me had actually happened in the Arctic. And so I asked them, what is going on in Israel? Is it a black hat or white hat instigated? They said to me that Israel is the final cleanup in order for the worldwide peace plan to start to be fully activated. And they said it is a place of extreme light in terms of its religion, and also in terms of extreme dark because of its Satanism. This situation in Israel is creating a disparate narrative, which again is all part of the overall plan. So we've seen it before, how we have two dialogues going, we don't necessarily understand what's going on. So I said, so these disparate narratives, when are we going to get to a point where people are going to stop talking or taking religious and political sides? Because this is where we need to be getting to in order to have this worldwide military peace plan. And they said that each war, event, and tragedy gives people an opportunity to assess from their own place of inner knowing what do I believe? What is my truth? And as sovereign beings, we have to move away from these religious and political doctrines, and we have to listen to our inner truths, and we have to start becoming more guided by our inner compass. And so they're saying there should be no division of land, and the world was not created with postcodes. They said that on the ground, these attacks, they provide a distraction so that these other sort of cleanup operations can be fulfilled. And it also helps to prepare everything so that they can move into this worldwide peace plan. So they were saying that the seeming like disarray between leaders is like an opportunity for more progressive talks, new plans, and like new strategies going forward. And I said, so what are they doing over there? Are they like cleaning out tunnels or something, or like tidying things up? And they said in some cases, what they're doing is that the underground bases are being cleared because they've got weapons and ammunition which will no longer be needed or acceptable going forward. And they said weapons of mass destruction or weapons aimed at land desolation or aimed at people are systematically being disarmed and disbanded around the world, because the emphasis moving like forward excuse me, the emphasis as we move forward is towards uniting all the nations onto like the Starlink and the Space Force worldwide networks. And so they're saying that combat in the future, peace in the future, and communications in the future, even power in the future, are all being designed to run in a cooperative way in the domain called space. So all these regions, they're all having to move onto this integrated system in the domain of space, i.e. the Space Force. And then that's the only way they're saying that we can get this worldwide military peace plan. And it's the only way we can enact it going forward. So each region, they're saying, is having to sign in to these sort of sets of protocols, treaties, and precepts to be able to be part of this worldwide operating system. And all trade, communications, and military security in the future will run from the space domain. So all countries and regions will need to maintain not only peace with other regions of the world and other countries, but they will also need to maintain peace with their citizens. So what they're explaining to us again is that they had already reached a peace deal in the Arctic. But in order to have these people now sign in, they have to clear out any ammunitions, weapons, or old methods of operations where they've got weapons that could harm people on the ground. Because in the future, all military operations will be run from space, and everybody will be signed into that space arena. So what you're seeing in Israel, from what they're explaining to me right now, is that they're cleaning out any tunnels or military weapons or operations which will not be allowed to operate in the future if this region is going to sign into the worldwide military peace plan. So it's a big cleanup operation in line with what they ratified in the Arctic. So they agreed it, and now they're going in and doing up the cleanup operation. So that's the way that I understand it. I also asked, are physical assets like gold and oil are they also going to be like quantified for this quantum virtual vault? And they said in some cases they will be, and access into an area during a time of, say, attack or war allows for, so this war that's going on in Israel, they're saying that when you have access during the time of attack or war, then it allows you to go in and you can reassess what assets they actually have. And you can take stock of what they've got, and if necessary, you can relocate it. So they're saying that under the Gaza Strip, there are many munitions that need to now be cleared, and there are also many dark documents. And I said, what are these dark documents? And they said they are plans and maps of how to attack and what and how to make certain weapons. So all of this is being cleared out. And they're also assessing what physical assets they might have, like gold and oil and silver and all those types of things, which will now be reflected into the quantum virtual vault. This is all part of this new worldwide military peace plan. So then I asked, once Israel is sorted out, will the worldwide military peace plan be fully operational? And they said no. They said the worldwide military peace plan is ongoing, but has a target of 26-27, when they hope that all regions will then be on board. So I said, is the new financial setup regarding the quantum virtual vault, is it dependent on this worldwide military peace plan? They actually said no. They said the quantum virtual vault is dependent more on going live once all the assets have been reflected into the vault. So once they have a clear idea of what gold, silver, oil, money each region already has, and they've been able to reflect that into the quantum virtual vault, then the quantum financial system could actually go live, even if certain areas around the world are still being signed in to the military peace plan. So we could still have a go sign or a go move on the quantum financial system. So just to go back, I said, is the new financial setup regarding the quantum virtual vault, is it dependent on people signing in to the worldwide military peace plan? They said no. The quantum virtual vault is dependent more on going live once all the assets of the world have been reflected into the vault. And they said some of that will depend on people signing in to the worldwide peace plan, and some of it is related to whether countries are ready to run a digital currency backed by assets. They said the worldwide military peace plan and the quantum financial system are two separate entities, but the overall cybersecurity of both of them will operate from the space domain. The space domain, Space Force, will oversee the cybersecurity of all pieces of the new setup as we move into the age of love, the technological age. And they showed me that the pieces are right at the top. You've got the Q team. You've got King Salman, you've got Mohammed bin Salman as the king move. You've got President Trump as the queen move. Below that, you've then got Space Force and the cybersecurity. And then below that, you've got devolution of governance, the quantum financial system, and the devolved methods for communications. And below that, you've got we the people. So the communications will be things like your quantum phone being able to speak directly to the Starlink. I said this Israel situation, I said it's happened very close to this vision, that I saw of Mohammed bin Salman in the Arctic, and is it related? Did the meeting in the Arctic necessarily, the timing of it, did it necessarily relate to what happened in Israel? And they said no. They said that the meeting in the Arctic was more related to the quantum financial system and how to move assets onto the quantum virtual vault. And they said that Mohammed bin Salman is working with the Q team on many levels, strategic and operational. And his focus is to persuade all of the seeming disparate regions of the Middle East to move towards the worldwide military peace plan, so that they can do this for the good of humanity. And he has to do this whilst also being sensitive to the differences in religious and cultural viewpoints around the Middle East. So Mohammed bin Salman is a light worker, and his soul has incarnated at this time to undertake this extremely powerful role. And at a soul level, they're saying that he is President Trump's counterpart in this humanitarian plan for the world. So then I said, will the recent Israeli attacks, will they help Mohammed bin Salman to negotiate towards the worldwide military peace plan as we go forwards? And they said that Mohammed bin Salman's emphasis at this time is to reflect the assets onto the quantum virtual vault for the quantum financial system. So they're saying that this restructuring within Israel will act as a catalyst to allow this to happen. And they're saying that as the old layers of governance are removed, then Mohammed bin Salman will be able to conduct meetings to discuss fair outcomes for all while securing these assets. And this will then lead to this region being able to sign in to the worldwide military peace plan. They said that Israel cannot sign in currently until it clears its munitions stock, which is now outdated, and protection, which is now outdated in terms of protecting the new world. And it's outdated in terms of, how we need to align the assets of what Israel have into the quantum virtual vault. I said, will a peace plan be made between Saudi Arabia and Israel? And they said, going forward, peace plans will not be devised between countries. This is always how it's been in the past. This has always been unstable, and it's been dependent on what leaders are elected worldwide. And of course, that is then dependent upon the leaders' individual sets of policies and sometimes their career intentions. So in the past, if leaders do not agree, then diplomatic relations break down, and then we have wars. So they're saying that under the new setup, countries and regions are all signing into the worldwide military peace plan based on a set of policies, precepts, and principles which will allow them to have the benefits of not just local protection, but worldwide military protection. And that their cultural needs will remain. And as long as they maintain peace with other countries and their citizens, then they will be protected and covered by the Space Force, the worldwide military peace plan. So then I asked them, are the Iranians or the Palestinians trying to derail a peace plan between Saudi Arabia and Israel. And they said that on the surface, it looks like this is the case, but strategically, this is all moving these regions towards implementing this worldwide military peace plan. And Mohammed bin Salman is an instrumental figure in securing the peace talks and explaining the new setup to the other leaders and the other factions in the Middle East. So I asked them, is the war in Israel a black hat or a white hat operation? And they said the events being coordinated around the world are because of continued black hat infiltration and control over many hundreds of years in some cases. And the white hats are systematically making inroads to expose these dark players so that people can see for themselves who has been orchestrating these wars, these dark storylines to keep people controlled and in fear. I then asked, is Israel the last phase of the plan? They said Israel is one of the areas in the last part of the plan. They said the Middle East, to the greater extent, is on board with the worldwide military peace plan, but people have to see and understand what has actually been going on so that they can be on board with how the world is going forward in the future. And I said, so will events occur in other parts of the Middle East as part of this like final phase of the plan? And they said, yes, there will be other events in the final phase of putting together this plan. And I said, so Mohammed bin Salman, what is his role at this time? They said to me that Mohammed bin Salman is the person to lead the Middle East towards unification and towards peace. And I said, did anything that Mohammed bin Salman do in the Arctic or before, did it contribute to the Israel war or conflict that has now begun? And they said no. They said that Mohammed bin Salman is a white hat and he's working at the top of the Q team, and that the ongoing discussions, planning, and dedication by this whole team is going to lead humanity into military peace and sovereignty for all citizens. They said that there are amazing things ahead of us which have never been witnessed before. I said, will the events in Israel and the final phases of this plan affect the USA election in 2024? And they said yes. They said the election of 2024, if it goes ahead, will be the last election held under its current voting and legislative framework. They said going forward, a new setup will change how the USA makes its decisions. They said it will be more of a devolved setup, a devolution of governance. They said that all citizens will be able to participate in the running of their society, no matter what their background, and people from all walks of life will be involved in this new setup. So then I actually saw something come out about this new project called Project 2025. And it seems to be suggesting that this is what the transition will be towards the new setup. The goal of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project will be to build 4 pillars that collectively will pave the way for an effective Conservative administration with a policy agenda, personnel, training, and a 180-day playbook. And they said the top of this printout says that Project 2025 is about building for a Conservative victory through policy, personnel, and training. So I wanted to find out if this Project 2025 is the new setup that we've been hearing about. So I said, is the Project 25 part of the new setup for the USA going forward? And they said yes and no. They said that Project 25 is the stepping stone towards the new setup. They said it's a framework that is intended to help move people away from the current political setup in the USA towards a system of devolution, towards a system of policy where you choose policy and not people. So I said, so Project 2025 is a transition project, and they said yes. And again, they said it's about policy agenda, personnel, training, and a 180-day playbook. And I said, the personnel and training aspects of this Project 2025, will it be Baron Trump that will be involved or Melania Trump? Because about 3 years ago on the Nick Venny-Armin show, I did a video where it might have been me on my own. I can't even remember now, it's such a long time. But I did actually say that Baron Trump in the future would take a personnel role, like a head of personnel role in the new setup. So I wanted to ask again, now that we're 3 years along, will Baron Trump or Melania Trump, will they have a role in this personnel training setup, this transition project? And they said that all the Trumps will be involved in this project to transition, and that Baron Trump will definitely be part of the personnel aspects of that transition project. And I said, so what will that involve? What will that involve? And they said that the personnel aspects of this project 2025 will be focused on what people truly have to offer in terms of skills and aptitude, rather than just like on their status or their education and their family line. They said that people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, and all demographics will be able to work and apply to be part of this transition project. So I wanted to know, what are they hoping to make the transition towards? What are they trying to transition to? And they said that Project 25 is helping to transition citizens towards becoming more sovereign, towards being able to operate in a truly free society with a devolved government. And I said, what is devolved governance? They said that devolved governance is where the emphasis of power is directed by the people rather than from a top-down, authoritarian or bureaucratic setup. They said these heavy bureaucratic structures are open to corruption and lack of input by we the people in its current format. And they're saying that by removing the layers of bureaucracy and opening up decision-making to the citizens, then a true structure for we the people is anticipated, and that the Project 25 will be the transition vehicle to move people across to the new framework. The new framework will involve devolved voting structures that are overseen by a centralized cyber system which will be Space Force or Star Shield, which is the part of Starlink that Elon Musk has been developing, and he's recently signed into Space Force, and they've called it Star Shield. So now I wanted to move on to some other subjects. One in particular was around how people kind of respond when they hear us talking about, say, President Trump, and it creates a very large reaction. And I wanted to look at, has there been some kind of spell casting going on humanity? So I asked them, because spell casting would then brainwash people into, if they hear a certain trigger word, that they react in a certain way. So I asked them, has a spell casting ritual or program been implemented to keep people that are of lower vibration sort of fighting this awakening plan? The reason I said lower vibration people is because generally it's a lower vibration that people can't see yet. They're not awake yet. So it's not meant in any sort of derogatory way. Now, they said that there has been a consistent attempt by the Dark Hat organizations in the past, and they called it Project Bluebird, to program the public into reacting or not reacting to certain external situations, good or bad. So I said, so is there a program in place to make people act patriotic towards Trump or to hate Trump and what he stands for? And they said, yes. They said there's programming in place on both parties, on both sides, to create extreme reactions. And I said, so who's doing this like programming? And they said the black hats are using programming and they're using these techniques to create a divide between the people. So one side looks like it hates Trump, like with a vengeance, and people are like literally spitting feathers. And then on the other side of this program, people are fanatical about Trump. Now, those two extremes are the black hat programming. And they're saying that both extremes obviously create this polarity and division, and it keeps people from understanding the good changes that are being implemented by the white hat military worldwide peace plan. And I said, so who is susceptible to this sort of black hat or agency programming? And they said people who live in fear and who have a low vibration without a strong connection to source, like a real connection to a source, these people can be manipulated by this type of programming. And I said, who is doing it? Who's doing this programming? And they said the black hat arms of the military in some cases, and some three-letter agencies. And it is also perpetuated through media organizations who are continuing the narratives in the news and the entertainment programs. And they are called programs, they said, because they literally program you. So then moving away from that onto Hollywood, I wanted to find out if we'd be seeing sort of more people coming online, coming forward, wanting to support or be in or run for the 2024 elections in the USA. And they said to me that people will step forward who are being prepped and trained for the new setup. And I said, so what sort of people might that be? Now, again, they said to me that Oprah Winfrey is going to be an ambassador of peace in the new setup. And I said, who else will step forward? And they said, it is currently being decided who will take significant roles in the new setup, which will help the people to transition to we the people and this devolved structure in the future. So then I said, but people like Oprah Winfrey and like many others in politics and the entertainment industry, they've been implicated in the adrenochrome and the trafficking industry. And I said, so how can they now be spokespeople for the new movement, the true social movement? And they said that the black hat corrupt organizations of the past, they used contracts, programming, and stings to get people entwined in an industry which created billions of pounds in profit. And most people were trapped into a system by a blackmail and threats to their family or their reputation or even their life if they didn't do as they were told. So people who have stumbled upon this information have been put into secure locations. And what they mean by stumbled upon this information, people that have become aware of what is going on with the child trafficking and the adrenochrome, but are tied into these contracts and can't get out. These people, to the greater extent, have been put into secure locations to keep them safe. And in some cases, they've been even reported as dead. So for an example, John McAfee, Jeffrey Epstein might be another one. People like that, they've been taken out of the seemingly taken out of the system to keep them safe because they've stumbled across this information. So I'm saying, so is there an actual adrenochrome industry? And they said very much so. And I said, are these politicians and these Hollywood organizations and governments, are they involved or have they been involved? And they said yes. And I said, what was their involvement? And they said, in some cases it was to manufacture the adrenochrome. And in some cases it was to do the child trafficking. And I said, where are these predominant players now in this adrenochrome industry? Where are they? And they said the predominant players right now are in China and Indonesia. So I'm wondering if we still have to clean up these areas before we can move forward fully with the worldwide military peace plan. So then I wanted to ask about Guantanamo Bay, Gitmo. I said, are the Gitmo arrests real for the human trafficking? And they actually said no. They said that Gitmo is a high security prison, but crimes against humanity, like children, are not being dealt with here. I said, where are they being dealt with? They said they are being dealt with in specialist military locations worldwide. And Gitmo is being used as a distraction by the white hats. I said, is it a signal to the perpetrators? And they said, very much so. I then wanted to ask about Klaus Schwab, because there was a book that came out called The Great Reset, which is currently on Amazon. And I wanted to know, did he actually write that book? And they said that The Great Reset did. So I said, The Great Reset, did Klaus Schwab actually write this book? And was its content deliberately released to wake the people up? And they said that the book's content was based on the New World Order's concept, on the New World Order. And the content of the book was intended to wake people up so that they could see what the New World Order were planning. And they said that this concept and strategy, though, the New World Order concept strategy, was halted before Trump was elected in 2016. And that everything playing out now regarding Schwab and those types of non-government organizations, this is all white hat directed, and it's all infiltrated by them. And so I said to them, so is Klaus Schwab working for the White Hats? And they said that Klaus Schwab actually died some time ago and that an actor is playing him. And I said, so what is the plan regarding these non-government organizations and these large corporate entities? You know, how do they fit into this new worldwide peace plan? They said that the NGOs will all be restructured going forward. And I said, how will this be possible? Because, you know, they are powerful through their kind of like market share and their influence. So, for example, like the World Economic Forum. And they said to me that in the future that the non-government organizations will be gradually disbanded as each worldwide location moves onto and into the new setup, and the policies of the non-elected government, the NGOs, will then collapse along with the government structures that have previously supported these NGOs. So what they're saying is that as the government structures collapse around the world, the NGOs won't have anybody to support them, so they will naturally collapse as well. So I said, so will the World Economic Forum, for example, will that collapse? And they said that all NGOs will be disbanded going forward as power moves to a decentralized system of we the people. So I said, so Delta cybersecurity, will it need to oversee these non-government organizations like going forward? And they said to me that Delta, which is from Space Operations Command, it would not have been responsible for NGOs going forward, as they don't oversee structures that are not tied directly to the Space Force security detail. So the non-government organizations are not tied to Space Force. So I said, who oversees the non-government organizations currently in order to sort of track, you know, their policies? And they said, currently, the non-government organizations are not controlled theoretically, only in the sense that they do have to abide by local laws in each location. And they said, other than that, they have been operating without sort of much scrutiny or restriction. And they said that in the future, this will be stripped back as people vote directly in their immediate locations for what they need. So moving on to Trump, I said, will Trump be able to run for 8 more years after 2024 or the next election or when we have the new setup? And they said, Trump is the commander-in-chief, and so he will run continuously until the freedom cities and the devolved governments are in place or enacted. And I said, at what point will Trump be removed from the role of commander-in-chief? And they said that he won't be. He will run as commander-in-chief until his last breath or until his mental condition warrants a handover. It may then be handed over to Mohammed bin Salman. So I hope you've really enjoyed all that information today. And I hope to see you next time. In the meantime, you can find me at Telegram, locals.com, LinkedIn, Buy Me a Coffee, and the X app. See you next time. Bye for now.